Over the last few years, field recording has become an important part of my creative practice alongside my music. In this video, I'm going to go through my entire journey with recorded sound, right back to art college over 30 years ago. I'm going to explore why I started field recording, the different types of gear that I've tried, the lessons that I've learned along the way, the setups that I use now, and how I use field recording in my work. A lot of field recordists are understandably really into their gear and particularly into their microphones. And when you look at a lot of primers like essential gear or how to start in field recording, those types of things, it's usually still pretty expensive. I've never had that kind of budget, so the gear that I've used over the last few years has been on the cheaper end. So if you're looking to start field recording and you don't have a large budget, then this video might be interesting to you. And also if you're looking to integrate field recording into your practice, this might also be of interest. Right, so let us begin. I think I can trace my interest in field recording right back to art college. I went to art college in the 1990s, to study sculpture, fine art sculpture. But when I went to college, I was already a musician. I'd been playing the violin for years. I played the guitar, I was in bands. I was really interested in all sorts of music, experimental music, minimalism, electronic stuff, ambient. And so I already was looking at the more art-based side of music. It was a natural progression for me to work using found sound. So I was, first of all, just making montage type work, tape manipulation, vinyl manipulation, and I actually started a multi-tracking shortwave radio to make collage pieces of sound art. And although I was doing sculpture, I was thinking more, I was using sound as a material. I used things from records.
Speed writing, shorthand dictation, record, shorthand, shorthand dictation, sign one. You have to be sure that you set correctly comfortably at your desk.
I did do what you might describe as field recording. I went round the college with a DAT recorder and a microphone, and I made lots of recordings from around the college site. And then I cut those up using an Akai sampler and made pieces of music from them. A sound piece, a sound installation made from the sounds that I'd collected from around the college site. And then after art college, I did another couple of things that were quite like that. So I did get a commission from a BMW showroom in Sheffield. There was a release of a new 3 Series, and they wanted a piece of work to go with the evening event in the showroom. And so they got me in to sample the car. I made some tape pieces based upon the sounds from the car, which was quite successful. And then a couple of years later, I did a residency at Sheffield Sound Studios, and during that time, I was doing the same kind of work, collecting sounds, and in that case, I went out again with a DAT recorder. I recorded a whole day of the objects that I used and the sounds that I used, kind of collaged them together into a piece that I edited in Pro Tools, which was the first time that I could edit audio directly in the computer rather than triggering sounds on a sampler. I was using Pro Tools. That was all a long time ago, and that was the work that I'd done with sound. Found sound as material, essentially field recording, but wasn't really thinking about it in that kind of same field recording way. So then art music career didn't take off as I wanted, and I moved into design and software development. So that brings us up to more recent times. (2019). Just a few years ago now, and I've got back into making music, and I'm uploading music to SoundCloud. And I was interested in sampling still, because that's the type of music that I'd made before. Ableton Live, similar to Pro Tools in a lot of ways, in that you can manipulate sound directly. And it's very powerful. You can do all sorts of things, you know, with sound, time stretch and slow things down. You can do endless things. So I started to collect recordings. I didn't have any recording equipment, so at the time, initially, I was using my phone, which at the time was just this iPhone SE, and this was my recorder, my field recorder at the time. I had no microphones, nothing. One or two nice recordings that I made from this period on just using this phone. One actually made it onto a track, which was a field recording that I made at Derwent Water. But most of the time, the quality of recordings that I would manage to get out of this was not great. And so I decided that I would have a look at upgrading this to buy something that was better for field recording. I wanted to capture more environmental sound, I think, for ambient work. And I was really interested in how I could use that sound to make music. I wasn't really interested in field recording for the sake of it, or the recordings to stand on their own at that point. I wanted field recordings to add texture, atmosphere to my music. And the first thing that I bought was a little field recorder, little pocket recorder, the Olympus LS-P4. It's got built-in stereo microphones. Well, it's got a 3-mic system. And I thought, okay, this is an upgrade. It's reasonably cheap. This is actually larger than it is. It's actually a very small thing, slightly smaller than this, but very handy. Keep it in your bag. And I thought, great, this will do the job. I'll be able to go out now and capture whatever sounds I like. When I'm out places, field recording will just become something that I can do, capture all sorts of stuff. And it didn't really turn out like that, because this is when I got my first reality check about field recording. And over that year of 2019, over the summer, on family holidays, we went a lot of places, and I took this to Stonehenge. I took it to Stonehenge and various other places, the coast as well. We went to Filey and we went to Cornwall that year, and I took this with me and I made lots of recordings, and they were very disappointing. It's not really the fault of the recorder. It's a great little recorder. You have to use the built-in mics, or a mic that has its own power. So it doesn't have plug-in power. But you can get obviously microphones that have their own batteries attached to them, so you can plug those into this. It's got an external mic input, but I didn't really know about any of that at that time. And the recordings I got were bad. The main problem that I had with it was wind. I went to Stonehenge and I had this idea, this amazing idea, that I was going to walk between the visitor centre and the stones, following a similar route to the way that people have, for thousands of years, people have walked in that area. And there were so many visitors at Stonehenge from all over the world. I had this idea that I would capture different languages and accents and like snapshots of people I was walking along. But essentially what I got was maybe like 25 minutes of pretty much distorted wind noise with the odd like bit of voice in there. And so it was a total fail. Everything that I recorded that summer was disappointing, and I didn't really use any of those recordings. You realise quite quickly when you try to make field recordings that the wind, rustling clothes, handling noise, these are all quite big problems that you're going to have to probably work on a little bit harder to overcome. So I also used this in the studio, and I had an idea that I was going to record sounds from the recycling bin that we've got. Tins, cans, plastic containers. I've still got a load of it now. And this was my first attempt to record sounds from those objects and then maybe turn them into sample packs or use them in my work. But again, I didn't like the sounds I recorded. And even though it's not really the fault of this Olympus recorder, I just kind of felt that this wasn't doing it for me. And so I only had this for that year, and I decided to try something else. So next year, 2020. So I thought I'll try again, but this time, you know, and all the time through this process, I was reading about things and learning and, you know, going to these primers on field recording, but most of those they're of a different league. Mid-side mic setups, hundreds and hundreds of pounds per mic, and much more technical than I knew about at the time. I just wanted a small setup to record sounds with that would work. So this is what I came up with. So first off, this was testing my model making abilities to the limit. But I felt it was worth building this because I can explain it a lot better with a 3D model, because it's quite a complicated piece of gear and it's quite hard to have on a single, like this one. You pretty much got it all there. You can see what's going to happen with that. It's a little portable recorder, all your buttons on the front, but this is much more complicated. So I decided to build this. Quite impressive. A Tascam DR-70D, which it's an interesting choice because it's actually reasonably cheap. Really quite a cheap recorder, but it's actually very capable. It's a 4-track digital recorder, and it has a lot of great inputs and a lot of possibilities. And this was a really great recorder. So I bought this first, and at the time I was planning on having a couple of different setups. So I bought a pair of small condenser mics, these Rode NT5s, and I've kept these and I use them all the time. I use them in the studio because they're just great little mics. So they come with this bar. They came with this bar. So you can use them in different ways. You can use them as a stereo pair like that, both facing forward. You can use them 90 degrees, so they're on top of each other like this, one on each side, and then you can see they're together. Or you can use them in or you can use them in ORTF or I can't remember what that is. Or you can use them in ORTF, so they're kind of like that, 110 degrees apart. So there's all these different stereo setups that you can use them in. And while I use them in the studio a lot now, at the time I was considering using them with this setup. So I was going to take these out with me. For wind protection of this type of mic, very expensive. And you do get them where you get, you can put the mics like that and they're inside a big pod that's got wind protection all around it. The Rycote one is very expensive, hundreds of pounds. So I thought, I know I can make one of those. And so I decided I'm going to build a wind protection blimp for these. I built it out of wire and covered it in fur that I bought. Used kind of plastic netting to build it, and I spent ages on it, and it totally failed. It was an utter disaster. It wasn't very strong. And it really didn't offer any wind protection. It was just terrible, really. I haven't got it anymore, but I spent ages making it. I'd actually gone to the coast to use this setup with my homemade wind protection blimp, and it didn't work. So during that holiday, I did not use those. But luckily, at the same time, I had also bought these, and they take plug-in power, so plug them in there, they get powered up, and stereo mics, and these are called Clippies. They're from a company called Micbooster. They're little tiny capsules inside there, and they're very high quality for their size and their price. Omni microphones, so you get a stereo pair, and I also bought little wind shields for these guys. So I've got foam shields on them and then wind shields on them. And I had these little clips that go on here. With the little clips, I clipped these onto my rucksack on the side of my bag, and then this was inside the rucksack. This was loads better. These are great little microphones, really nice sound. So this was the first year where I started to have some successes with field recording. So I went to the coast, family holiday, went to Filey, and made a lot of really nice recordings of the sea. And I also had this little thing. It's a microphone. IK Multimedia, an iRig field mic. And so this was my phone still. And I bought this, which goes into the lightning socket like that and upgrades the microphone. You can switch it 2 different ways. And I also had a little stand like this, where I would put the phone in there, and then you got a mic on the end. So this was my little portable setup that I had in my bag. So I tried recording with this as well, upgrading the mic on the phone, and it wasn't very good. So this gives you a stereo mic on your normally mono phone, but I didn't get a lot of luck out of it. I tried it over that summer, didn't get much out of it. So the iRig field mic wasn't much of a success, and in the end I kind of gave up using the phone and decided that because this was such a success that I was just going to not bother with phones anymore. So this was successful, and from these recordings I did a lot of work. At the time I was still thinking, like I said before, that the recordings that I made were part of my music. I wasn't thinking about field recordings just as field recordings. I was wanting them as atmosphere for my music. So with the recordings of this, I actually went back to the studio afterwards and I wrote music around the recordings that I'd made. And that resulted in the album Filey. Music inspired by and still including these field recordings that I did in 2020. And I was really pleased with that album, and I was pleased with the combination of field recording and music. I was also inspired by the recordings themselves. The experience of going out early in the morning, walking along the beach, looking for interesting combinations of sounds, interesting places to record. I think that changed my idea of what field recording could be. Previously, I'd just been looking for sounds, but now the experience of going field recording, I'd really enjoyed. It was very relaxing, kind of like a meditative experience of spending a longer than normal amount of time somewhere, listening, quite deep listening, and recording the sea. And it was listening to the sea in that way and listening back to the recordings that I made there was quite a transformation in terms of how I thought about this. And I used some of these recordings in a collection of field recordings of the sea that I released later. Half of the recordings on that album are from this trip. We're moving on. The next year, this recorder is made to go on top of a camera and upgrade the sound qualities of a decent camera, because you can mount it underneath and then you can mount things on top of it. So you see it above cameras, and it is a decent piece of kit. You can, like I say, with all these, it's got its own built-in mics as well. But with these XLR inputs and phantom power, you can have 4 mics running into it, and you've got the plug-in power as well. This is an excellent, for the price, it's a really good field recorder. But it is quite bulky, and to be honest, because my attempt to use the Rode mics when I was out had failed, but this with the smaller Clippy mics had been a success. And the recordings that I was getting from these were good enough for me. I was happy with them. And so I decided to kind of not pursue the microphone angle for a while, and instead to just reduce down the size. I didn't need the phantom power. I didn't need all these inputs. So I traded the Tascam in for a smaller recorder, which was this one, which I still have. So the Tascam, brilliant recorder, well worth getting if you want a proper entry level but very capable field recorder. I'd recommend getting one of those. And so because I was using just the plug-in power, I thought I'd try this Roland R-07. It's very compact. It's got plug-in power, so the Clippies can just plug in there. You can have it in your bag, and it does have its own built-in mics. At a push, you can just make field recordings. And this actually belongs to this. So you can try and resist the wind a bit with this, and but I can also use it with the Clippies. And so this was a very compact system. When I was using the bag with the Clippy mics attached to the bag, I was still having some problem there. I could leave the bag sitting there and record things and walk away from it. But I still had quite a lot of trouble with rustling sounds and things. So I was trying to look at that, the idea of handling noise, and I came up with this idea that I could use these so I would clip these on here and then get this in here like this, and And this was my little setup that I had, something like this. But I was still essentially recording from the Clippy mics. So I took this out with me to the coast, to Cornwall in 2021, and made recordings, some more recordings of the sea mainly. This was really handy, really good, worked well. And these recordings became the second half of the Recordings of the Sea album, which was really which you can get on my Bandcamp. And so I was really enjoying the experience of field recording, going out early, nobody around, and I was getting good recordings of the sea, and I was putting them together and releasing them as albums. I didn't do the same thing as I'd done the year before in Filey and make an album of music. It just didn't feel right in that way, and so that year I just made recordings of the sea. 2022, I had exactly the same setup. Went to Pembrokeshire to a National Trust property called Gupton Farm. Beautiful place, quite a large estate that you can just walk around, lots of different habitats. There's the sea, there's meadows, fields where there's lots of birds, linnets and house martins, all sorts of birds. And so while I was there that week, I made a lot of field recordings. They were quite successful. I initially, when I got these recordings home, I liked them. Some beautiful recordings of the sea reeds and birds at Gupton Farm. Things that I hadn't recorded before because I'd never been anywhere like that before. And I was really pleased with the quality of the sounds from just these little Clippy mics. And I wanted to do something with the recordings, and so initially I did what I'd done with the Filey work and tried to build some music around the recordings, and that went quite well, and I almost got an album finished based on these recordings of music. More ambient work really, built in Ableton Live, inspired by these recordings. And then I thought, these recordings stand up on their own. And so I took all the music out, and a lot of the recordings had suffered from airplane noise, a lot of aeroplanes flying over, a lot of flight paths in the area. And so initially I was a bit disappointed with that, but then in the end I decided to just keep them in. It's kind of an honest soundscape of Gupton Farm. And I put them together into an album and released them just as field recordings with a kind of journey feel to them, like you're walking around the site, different locations, and really interesting ideas of the man-made sounds of the flight and the bird flight. And so I put it together into an album that called Flight Paths. And, I thought there was something there in that. It was quite well received, got a couple of good reviews. So Flight Paths 2022, Gupton Farm, recorded with this. So it was a very successful year. First kind of proper album of field recording. Still using this little setup. And yeah, so I'd move forward quite a bit in 2022. So the next year, 2023. The one thing with this small recorder and this previous recorder here is that these are 16-bit recorders, and so which is fine. You know, most digital recording is 16-bit, but because of that, with loud sounds, there is a potential to clip the recording and get a distorted recording, and that had happened to me a few times. And so last year I thought, okay, I spotted this, which is the Zoom F3. And again, this is a very small compact field recorder, but this is a 32-bit recorder. You can record things and not worry so much about distortion and it clipping. And you can also record things quieter and raise the volume without introducing as much noise as you would with a 16-bit recording. So quite handy to have a 32-bit field recorder. It's so compact, and so I've kept my Roland R-07 because I like it. Compact little recorder, very useful. It's nice to have it around. Very handy with plug-in power. So I kept that, but I've now got this. And so the way that I use, and this was quite a wobbly and difficult setup. So I had to think and came up with a slightly better solution based around this Zoom F3. This is a similar tripod in that it has these extra arms on, and so this has a screw mount. This one has a screw mount as well, and because I'm no longer needing the to clip on the Clippies here, I could just use the screw mount and mount the recorders directly onto this, like so. And so the recorders, it's a lot more stable in there. And then there's these two arms on the side, which I don't need these little clips anymore here on the Clippies. I bought these, they're called Liars. I got these from Micbooster, the same place that I bought the Clippies. They give you a little bit of protection from like vibration, and so they just clip into here. And so they're much more stable and positionable, all sorts of angles. You can put them really close together, or you can face them away from each other. You can try all sorts of setups with them. It's a lot more versatile than it was before. And the only issue that I had with these, you can buy the Clippies with a mini jack like this, or you can buy them with XLRs on them. But the ones that I had were the mini jack. So I bought this small converter here, which takes the mini jack and converts the plug-in power. So this now plugs into the Zoom on the two XLRs, and I go from the Zoom to XLRs, and the phantom power on here powers the Clippies through this little converter here. So that's really handy. You can get the Clippies just that plugs directly in, and since this little Zoom F3 has come out, it's so handy. A lot of manufacturers have made small microphone arrangements that can just plug directly into this, so you can have a small recorder with small microphone setups that people have made, and then I just tidy these wires away somehow under here. And so this is what I've currently got. It's much more stable, it folds up quite easily, and I can put it in my bag, and so it's overall, it's a bit of an upgrade from what I had in 2022, and this is what I currently take out field recording, and it's brilliant. It's really good. I have been using this to record audio for my videos because it's so handy. You can just plug in any XLR mics, and and start recording. And since I went to Gupton Farm, I have made a lot of other recordings, but nothing that has come together into a collection. So I wanted to expand out my microphones as well. So I was starting to look at other things. And when I went to Gupton Farm, I actually had these with me as well, which are Olympus LS-P4. It's a stereo pair of electromagnetic pickups. So these don't record sound. Effectively, they record radio waves that things give out. All sorts of things give out electromagnetic radiation. And these pick up things from computers, phones, plugs, chargers, all sorts of electric circuits. And also when I was at Gupton Farm, there's an electric fence there, and I got good recordings from the electric fence. So I also was branching out in the types of recordings I was making. When I had the Tascam, I'd also bought some other microphones at the time, because I wanted to try out a whole range of things. A contact mic and another contact mic, a hydrophone. I think they are slightly different. This one works underwater. These microphones are made by Jez Riley French, who is a sound artist from the UK. And he makes long durational pieces often, using contact microphones and hydrophones. And he also sells them as well. And I tried these at various points along the journey so far, and I never really got much out of them, never really worked out how to use them. I have got some adapters so that change the impedance, I think, so you can plug it into that and then plug it into XLR. I think that's supposed to help. I really didn't look into the technicalities of that. I've got a small inline preamp as well, big amp piezo, phantom power, and you get a little preamp to boost the signal out of these, and then you can plug that into there. And I've never got much that I've really liked out of the piezo mics so far. I just need to maybe work with them a bit more. But the electromagnetic pickups, I've enjoyed working with those, and I've actually got a few different types. I've got the Lom Electruzi, I've got a Soma Ether. It's electromagnetic pickups, but it's also got a radio receiver in it as well. So it's quite an interesting device to pick up sounds from the ether. And I've also got a very cheap telephone pickup coil, £5 off Amazon. But actually, these three electromagnetic pickups, I've actually got some interesting results out of these, and I'm going to do a separate video just on electromagnetic pickups. And I now have the final thing that I have for field recording is I have this. This was on offer on Amazon and was a really good price, and so I thought I'd pick one up. This allows me to make binaural recordings. So it's Sennheiser Ambeo smart headset, and it works with a phone. So it plugs into a lightning socket, and then you get an app on the phone. And the way that these work is that they have your normal headphones, so little speakers in there in your headphones, and these on the outside are microphones. So you put those into your ear and you get a binaural recording where the microphone is shielded one direction by the shape of your head. You only get directional sound recorded on each side of your head. The recording then sounds similar to what you hear. So it's quite an immersive recording, and that's why people like binaural recordings. I've got these now, and I can, just with my phone, I can make binaural recordings, and I have made a few of those. I made a good one at New Street train station recently. it was a very rainy summer, and I decided to make a project around recordings at home, recordings of the rain, using these various microphones around my house, just out the back door, from inside, through windows. And I put that together into an album, Recordings of the Rain, which is available on Bandcamp. So over that journey, you can see I've moved from treating recordings as that kind of artistic, that found sound idea of sound as material and something that you can manipulate to do other things, to really starting to appreciate field recording as something of its own. I'm quite happy with the recordings that I can make and very much enjoy it. This gear, I mean, this setup here with the Clippy mics and the zoom and the tripod, it wouldn't cost you a lot of money. There's only, a couple of £100 to get that kind of setup. The binaural mics, sometimes they're on offer. I think I got these for £40. And Roland do binaural in-ear pickups as well. And then, the electromagnetic stuff is good fun, all sorts of things. Contact mics, they're not expensive. All this equipment is affordable, and, it's possible to make really good recordings with them. So in terms of in the future, what I'd like to do, I very much enjoy my field recording, and in the future I'd like to perhaps think about trying some other microphones, upgrading wind protection a bit, spending some more time trying to work out how to record with the piezo mics, the contact and the hydrophone. You can find the 3 field recording albums that I've released, which is Recordings of the Sea, Recordings of the Rain and Flight Paths, are available on Bandcamp, on my Bandcamp page. And since Flight Paths came out, a lot of the recording work that hasn't made it into albums, I have released on Substack. So you can find all of a lot of my field recording work on those 2 sites. So I hope this video has been of use if you're thinking about getting into field recording. Just some ideas about how it works for me and the types of gear that you can get, quite, affordable gear that you can get to help you do it. So as I say, I've got another video planned soon on electromagnetic recording. And if you enjoyed this walkthrough of my field recording journey, I've also done another video where I show how I've moved from working with a DAW, Ableton Live, and slowly looking and experimenting with hardware equipment and moving away from that. So if you're interested in this journey, you might be interested in that journey. So I'll put a link up to that here. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next one.
Speed writing, shorthand dictation, record, shorthand dictation, sign 1. You have to be sure that you shift correctly and contemplate at your desk. Be sure to follow the instructions given in the order on count. Thank you for your order in May day for 2000 subscription. I'm sorry to imply you have not now been to the economy.